go in 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Cultivated Live on Wednesday, May the 7th. I'm here with my co-founder and our editor-in-chief, Jeremy Burke, as well as Arish Halani from Herbwell. I say Herbwell because I live in Toronto, and people here say Herb, which is like the funniest thing. It makes weed sound not cool if you call it Herb, but Herbwell is much better. Arish, thanks for being here.
Good. Thank you for having me, guys.
We wanted to have you on because one, we like talking to business owners in the cannabis space, but two, you have operations in a number of states. We wanted to sort of ask the differences and variability between those two and how it's going. But before we do that, give us your background pre-cannabis, because we always think that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Arish. My background pre-cannabis was short-lived, but very corporate. I graduated college from Babson, which is in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
I'm from Natick, so
very, very nice. Lemon Thai was our favorite Asian food in that area. So
there you go.
we would frequently eat that. I graduated in about 2016, and then 2017, I went to go work at JP Morgan, and I was doing commercial banking, which is essentially just writing loans and underwriting them for middle market companies and between size 200 million and 2 billion of revenue. That was kind of the sweet spot. I did that for about 366 days. I had a 1-year contract. And kind of the last 3 months of the job, I was just very, very focused on getting back to the state of Massachusetts because this role was in Chicago, and as cannabis was legalizing. So I basically quit my job. I took my laptop and I took a vision, and I came back to Boston to work as a bud tender at Columbia Care. So Columbia Care was the first medical operating dispensary, one of the first in the city of Boston. So just having that accolade, I thought that they would be a great operator to work for. It was located on Milk Street, right in downtown Crossing, which is now a recreational store called the Cannabis. So I worked there for about 3 to 4 months, and very quickly kind of learned all things regulatory, licensing, cannabis, vertically integrated. I mean, I just became an absolute sponge. So it was like 7 to 10 hours of bud tending, and then another 6 to 7 hours of just learning how to get a license. So within 3 months, I seem to have a tendency to quit jobs. So I quit that job, and I ended up being in conflict because I was getting very close to winning a license and getting awarded that. So around month 3 of being a bud tender, I was able to basically help a gentleman named Peter DeCaro co-found a company called Resonate, which was a vertically integrated operator out in Massachusetts, located in Worcester and Northampton. And essentially, myself, with a little bit of seed capital that I had, my father, our family were one of the largest seed investors for that company, and pretty much helped it grow from paper and licenses to locations and a 50,000 square foot vertically integrated cannabis facility that is now operating with 2 medical and recreational dispensaries. So that's kind of like my short story of how from graduating college to starting my operations in Massachusetts. And I can kind of pause there and see if you guys have any questions.
No, I like the jump from JP Morgan into
yeah.
That's my favorite thing ever.
Talk about that a little bit. I mean, you've got to be the only person we've had on the show, and from underwriting loans at JP to being a bud tender. So talk about what that transition was like and how you found that.
Yeah, I not to just joke around, but I think I've always been kind of adamant on this strategy of, give me a laptop and a vision. I think I'll be able to figure it out. And it was always like, hey, well, do you need school? Do you need formal education, or do you just need passion, dream, and internet? And you can figure a lot of things out. So towards the tail end of my JP Morgan career, it was like, it was a 1-year journey, and within 6 months, I knew I didn't want to do this, and that I wanted something entrepreneurial. I had no idea what I wanted to do. One of my buddies, Sam Barber, who had founded Cultivated, which was one of the largest acquisitions in Massachusetts. He was my fraternity brother, about 3 years ahead of me. He was already kind of building his facilities And I was watching him from afar, understanding, hey, how do you do this, and how can it get done? So that was my thought. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I am going to quit the cushy job, and I'm just going to find any cannabis job that I can until I can meet enough people, learn the system, and find my own opportunity. And God be it, if that ended up me being a bud tender for 5 years, I would have done that. I think I had a lot of interest in also quitting that job.
Yeah.
Passionately, I found the way out as well.
Well, that's the common thread among many entrepreneurs is quitting jobs.
Yeah, that's it. It's every time I have a new opportunity, it's like I quit my whole last job and I put somebody else in place. Yeah.
Fair enough. And then that's the Massachusetts part of the journey. And then you must be a glutton for punishment, because then you entered the New York market, as if the Massachusetts market wasn't tough enough to operate in. You apparently saw opportunity in New York as well. Talk a little bit about that. And then sort of further the challenges of operating across, I mean, not across state lines, but in two different markets. Yes, they're adjacent, but in two markets.
Yeah, I think just tailing off of Massachusetts. So ultimately, after we founded Resonate, built that operations, I was like the retail director and partner in the company. So my focus was just doing everything that it took, from opening the retail store to operating those functions, hiring that staff, making sure the inventory is coming in, and the registers are working, discounts are working, marketing is happening. So I was all things retail, while Peter, the gentleman I mentioned, who's currently the CEO, managed all of the things retail and wholesale, pretty much the cultivation facility. And after Resonate, I ended up not only operating those retail stores, I ended up founding my complete own license in the city of Cambridge. Mm-hmm. So I was designated as a minority applicant under the regulations of Cambridge. It took me about 3 years while we were operating Resonate to hold the property and then ultimately get it approved and built from the city of Cambridge. And that location is on 1686 Massachusetts Avenue, right near Harvard and Porter Square. That's called Herbwell. That it was my first boutique store that was branded by myself. And that was the brand that we decided that, hey, if there are going to be new stores that are fully owned, that we would try to brand them in that Herbwell fashion. 3 years later, that opened. And the way I was able to get out of Massachusetts was my sister, who ended up coming to start operating those stores in Massachusetts. So we kind of like flip-flop roles. She was operating, working as a partner in a company, in a mortgage company out in Georgia. She had just gotten married and they were looking for new opportunities. So I said, hey, spent about 8 years building all this in cannabis, and like, there's an unbelievable opportunity in New York, and obviously I can't be in two places at once. So I'm still not in two places at once. I think a lot of people have this feeling like, man, this guy's really crushing it. How can he manage two states at once? Well, it's because I have a great partnership with my sister and my family, and they can really let me be hands-free. So they're running everything in Massachusetts, and I'm like fully focused here. With that being said, essentially, I moved to New York about 2.5 years ago, and right when New York was legalizing, same concept. It was laptop vision, and this time I had a little bit of experience and capital behind me, so that was a little bit of an easier front, because here in New York, they were releasing the rounds where you had to essentially, in order to be a minority and not a prior incarcerated a member of the society, there was a new opportunity for minorities. And they released like a 45-day, 60-day period where if you were a minority or a certain other like disenfranchised community member type, that you had like 60-day timeline to go sign a lease in New York. And if you signed a lease in New York, then you would be lucky enough to be in the lottery.
Right.
So within like 60 days, I came here. I signed probably over 15 to 20 leases, and all with differentiating like contracts with, hey, how much is the holding time? How much is my rent? Is this free? Do I have to penalize if I don't get approved? So it was like every deal was different, and it was all in the hopes of us just winning the lottery. So it's like you're holding a pretty big bag in the fate of randomization,
Right. You guys opened a store on Madison Avenue at the end of April. Can you talk a little bit about the store, the real estate, and why you're lucky enough to open on Madison Avenue? I mean, it's a pretty marquee location for a dispensary.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to the Commercial Observer the other day, and they were asking a similar question about my process. I mean, I called almost every landlord in the city of Manhattan. Like it was not a LoopNet, it was not a broker's, referral. Like these are not easy properties to find, and it takes an intense level of like an analysis, due diligence, landlord discussions, back and forth, competitive back and forth with other people offering crazy things that don't even have capital to put behind them, but
Right.
lords will take the flashy
New
number.
York. Yeah.
Don't care if people fail, as long as they were able to retain like a years of security deposit, right? Whereas like an operator like me is like, hey, well, let me do 3 to 6 months of security deposit because I want to last my 20-year lifetime on this term, and let the rent be a little bit more reasonable. Let this be reasonable so I can survive and not be like a 2-year operator. So I call pretty much, you could say, almost every landlord in Manhattan, because my focus was New York City, and so Manhattan, Bronx, and was the two places that I was really focused on. And I'm telling you, out of those like 15 leases I signed, I lost all of them. And I was awarded provisional. I ended up winning the lottery. We won a few licenses in the lottery, and they all ended up remaining provisional stage licenses. So every location and lease that I signed all got pretty much rejected, and I got out of every single one of those leases, and then I started back from scratch with the provisional license. And fortunately, I'd built a little bit of a Rolodex because we had to understand the lease signing to even get the lottery pick. And then I went back on the grind and called thousands of people, landlords, brokers, anyone who could give me an address that I could punch into the system and do a quick analysis on, is it eligible or is it not? So out of all of those, by the end of the time where I had gotten Madison Ave, there was a very small pocket like available that was not zoned out on Madison Avenue, and pretty much on Lexington and Third in this kind of like Midtown regional corridor, because all of the institutionally owned commercial large story buildings are there, and it was like near impossible to find a landlord to give their like ground floor commercial space because 9 out of 10 times there was debt on the property.
Right.
So for me, I was lucky to find, and on Madison Ave, by the way, we are the only location on Madison Ave. So the way that the entire zoning mechanism is set up, you have to be 1,000 feet from every dispensary. So on Fifth Avenue, there are more dispensaries on Fifth Avenue than any other avenue, from the start of Fifth to the end of Fifth. And Fifth and Madison are a parallel avenue. So because of all those approvals, almost like 80% of Madison Avenue is not available as an avenue because of just a pure buffer zone. On top of that, there was probably like, another 20% of properties that didn't fit because of churches, schools, or just landlords saying no, right? And you're left with like the 10% pool. There was like probably a good 5 to 6 properties that were like fully approved, eligible, let's call it. Landlord like picked up my phone call, and maybe we had some semblance of an LOI that like essentially died until I was left with one property, which was 519 Madison Avenue.
Right.
I mean, it was an anomaly to do the deal because if you look at the landlord on this property, that landlord is Freedland Properties. They are the largest landlord on Madison Avenue in the entire country. So Larry Friedland and his group, they own more properties on Madison Avenue than any other landlord in New York City. And one of the biggest like reasons of why I feel that they were interested in even giving it to us is because they felt that we would be a good high-end experience. I mean, he had the likes of a landlord to Hermes, like Louis Vuitton, Gucci. These are all super high-end legacy retail location brands,
Right.
Taking monstrous leases. So fortunately, he had one small little 5-story building that was bought out and had no debt on it. And I mean, we spent almost a good 6 months just like showing up to the meetings, showing him our proposals, showing him how are we like a differentiated operator and how we've had success in the past and we're going to be a long-term operator here. The catch was, hey, you want 700 square feet on the ground floor, but the building is 5 stories, and I don't want to lease it out. So take the whole building, or we're not giving you a lease. So your hands are tied, and I essentially ended up having to take the whole building.
Oh wow.
So you have the whole building, or?
Yep. And I think the reason that gave us, like, we wanted the first floor in the basement, and I had interest in the rest of the building because we have a social consumption license, right? And it's a 5-story building with a complete rooftop in the middle of Madison Avenue on 50.
Right.
Pretty impressive location and opportunity, but with that comes a price, So for us, I think the vision of us telling them, like, hey, we have intentions to build out the rest of the floors for social consumption, combined with us having a fantastic retail proposal, he was like, okay, we'll make this happen, and we'll give you the shot. And signed a 15-year lease. He was like, come for 5 years. We're like, this is not going to economically make sense for us. Said, can we do more? He's like, you can do 7. He's like, can we have 7 with an option for 5? He's like, no. Okay, can we have an option for 7? Like, we need to find a way to be here for at least like 15 to 20 years. Otherwise, like, the business opportunity will not make sense for us as the operators. So we're in a 15-year lease for the entire building. Retail is open, and we have now kind of plans to put together the remaining floors for hopefully the first social consumption license, legal, approved. There's a lot of shit going on in New York. But
well, it's also where Cultivated Studios are going to be in Manhattan, I think.
We need an office. So,
yeah, we need an office. But actually, I have a question about that, because the way you just described the lease, it takes a very savvy operator to understand all the nuances, even the part where you knew you needed a much longer lease than 5 years to make the location even worthwhile to make the investments you're going to make. Like in markets like in Toronto, like where I am, where we're like in year 6 of legalization, those initial leases are what generally sinks the business or sunk the business. And we see it now in year 6, like a lot of them closing because their first run of that lease is over, and they either can't afford it anymore, or they put too much in, like can't amortize the cost, all those things. Like, in your experience, like how many people fucked up their first lease? I'm being serious. Because it was such a scramble to get it. Like, how many people just said, whatever, we need it, we need to get the license, and then like, we'll deal with all this later. But later means you go out of business.
I'll just answer it with a small story, like a small humble brag about myself. My father was a franchisor for Jackson Hewitt. If you're familiar with the company, it's a tech. So he was the largest franchisor. He had signed over 200 leases and operated 200 locations. So we were operating about 10 states at the time. Wow. So I was fortunate to understand that very, very important factor, which you just said, is that the day you sign your lease is the day you determine, will this business be successful, and how much wiggle room do you have between that success and your demise? Because that is one of the biggest line items after payroll, if not it's comparable to payroll. It's generally larger than payroll, depending on what location you're in. That you got to decide, like, will this make sense? So I think for me, it was important to negotiate and lose a lot of leases, because I knew that if I signed that lease, within the first 6 months, I'd be out. And in New York City, the way the licenses have gone on, like 90% of licenses are first-time operators. Not only like cannabis operators, but like business operators. Not to like licensed retail, highly regulated, highly taxed. There are so many more humps that they have no idea that are coming, that we've been dealing with for the last like 8 years. So that was really important to me, was to sign the right lease. I'd say that for what it's all said and done, I thought I got a pretty good deal on the 5-story building on Madison compared to some of the other deals that I've seen people sign for much smaller spaces.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. That's a lesson a lot of people wish they'd learned.
Well, that makes it right for people like me not to kind of come off that way, but it's like, I have passion and vision to operate. I'm a young cat, and I don't have a lot of other things going on in my life besides this business. So I see opportunity where in 2 to 3 years, maybe 6 months, I already see the tailwind of operators not making enough revenue. It's a matter of time till they have to start filing their tax returns, that they realize that they're getting taxed on gross profit. They may not have realized that, and that IRS is very difficult to avoid. And because of all that, they're going to end up not only like not making money at the end of the year, they're going to owe a fat tax liability to the government at the end of the year. So like they hustled for a year, they were a prize possession winner in New York City or New York State, and for all that hard work, they have probably of hundreds, if not close to like $500,000 bill, a bill at the end of the year to pay, not income to take home, you know?
I mean, one question on that. I mean, we're coming up on time slowly, but you know, the New York market is maturing, right? Like we got some numbers from state regulators. One thing that stuck out to me is that per store revenue is declining. Like that's something you see in maturing markets. How do you think about navigating that going forward? It's like every other week there's a dispensary opening. Some are differentiated, some frankly are not. Like, you know, I go into them every day. Like, how do you navigate that, those sort of regular bumps in the road of a market maturation?
Yeah, I hate to sound like a nerd, but I just take a very strategic approach. Like, I'm not in the store like feeling, you know, and like, oh, I think people are happy today, or I think people are sad today, or, you know, one customer said this or one customer said that. We're like really data driven. Like, I think aside from trying to be on the sales floor and understanding consumer sentiment, just for my understanding, like we're looking at, okay, how many products are being purchased a month? What is that price sensitivity? What is the price elasticity? If I run a promo on this product, you know, does it get purchased more? We have operated in Massachusetts when the per pound was $5,000 at the peak. That same pound percentage has probably gone up 20% from that time, and now the price is like closer to like 1,000. So like, look at the stark difference of a true mature market. This is not new. This will continue happening. The beauty and the benefit of operators like me or experience and requirement to survive is like watching your margins, because prices are going to drop, and finding those people that are selling you the equivalent product at a much, much lower price, because those are going to be the cultivators that you are going to end up creating such a good rapport and relationship with, because they're going to help you weather that storm. And prices will continue going down. That's just how it is. So like, if you're not focusing on like volume customers at some point, right, and lower prices, you're not going to survive. There's going to be a time where you have less customers and higher tickets. That's right now. Right now is that time, and that is slowly changing. So people need to focus on, how do I like double my customer count? Should I sell a pre-roll for like $10, $6, $7? People, oh, like my pre-rolls needs to be expensive, otherwise I'm not going to make money. It's like, well, you're not allowing that other 5 customers that would have come that day just for a $5 pre-roll. You're not losing the guy who's going to buy the $10 pre-roll. You're actually not gaining the guy who would have bought that $5 pre-roll. So it's like increasing your menu count, having as many SKUs as possible with all the variety pricing, and then conducting an insane amount of marketing to like drive more people through your door. Those are the 2 like factors to survive and weather that storm.
Yeah.
That and your lease. No, I'm just kidding.
It's
true.
Tough negotiating. You can't do shit there. You know?
Well, no, but it like, it says to me like both from the pre-open, like from the idea to the lease to the operating a good retail business, like that's a lot of different skills in one Babson grad. But like, it takes a lot to like that. That's not everybody's experience. That is not even what they were courting from New York's, from any market really, to court someone who has those experiences. Like the best thing New York could have done, or any market that's trying to get small single person operators into the business, is help them find good leases, or avoid them signing bad leases. Like, honestly,
we could have a whole nother hour conversation about the program that they released to do that and how much of a failure it was. But
we'll get to that on the next episode.
Save that for another time.
Yeah. Well, Arish, this was great to connect with you. We will see you, of course, hopefully, when actually Jeremy and I will be in New York in a couple of weeks together. He's in New York all the time.
I'm in New York now, but yeah.
Maybe we'll come check out our new office space on Madison Avenue. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jeremy. Nice to see you this morning. We'll be back tomorrow with this week. No, tomorrow's Thursday with another Cultivated Live. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see everybody tomorrow.
Thank you.